Since Father's Day is upon us, we figured that the timing seems right that we would do a Bluey Dad's Good to Most Good video. Yeah, not a lot to say for the intro, so let's just cut right to the chase. Now, since we only have one character in our Bluey Moms video that was in the gray area, no one in this video will be in the gray area, so we have purely good dads. Kicking this list off at the bottom of the good section might be a bit of an interesting choice, but Bob has to be placed at the bottom of our good section. Now, just like Chris in our Bluey Mom's Good to Most Good video, Bob only has one episode where he's actually being a dad in his younger years, and the other times he's just his elderly state being a grandfather to his grandkids. Now, in Fairy Tale, Bob might be a bit grumpy, but at least he's not abusive compared to Chris. Even then, though, it was for kind of an understandable reason. But anyway, we already talked about her in our previous video. But unlike Chris, Bob doesn't have that much more to say. So, honestly, maybe we could place him in the gray area for just having not much to talk about, but unlike Chris, who had a few reasons to be in the gray area, Bob doesn't have that much more to talk about. So, honestly, the bottom of the good section does seem pretty reasonable, at least in our opinion. Next up, we're gonna place two dads together for having not only the equal amount of screen time, but they both don't really have a lot to say. So next up is Rusty's dad and Cornelius, who is Winton's dad. We'll start with Rusty's dad first. We only see him twice, and that's both in the army episode, just picking up Rusty from preschool, hugging him in the process, and the only other time we did see him was in for a quick scene in the cricket episode. Now we have to place him this low because these are his only two appearances, since he is in the army, and that is understandable why we don't get to see him that much. As for Cornelius, he has almost the exact same amount of screen time as Rusty's dad, but there's not really a lot to say about him. He does seem to care for Winton and is a pretty nice guy, all things considered, but that's really all we have to say. Now, if we had to pick one over the other, obviously we would have to place Rusty's dad higher, but we only have to place him this low for his minor appearances, otherwise he's definitely a very good dad, for sure. But for now, both him and Cornelius will share a spot together near the bottom of our good list. Okay, this might seem very odd to place this low, but Mackenzie's dad is next. Now, don't get us wrong when we say this, Mackenzie's dad definitely is good, but kind of like Cornelius and Rusty's dad, for example, there's not really a lot to say since he's just a secondary character, only appearing in a few episodes, and that's really about it. Unlike his wife, who in our mom's video, we actually ranked a little higher, but here though, for him, yeah, I'm sorry, there's not really much we could say. But hey, Mackenzie's dad definitely does get credit because Mackenzie is a good kid. Next up is Honey's dad, Marcus. Now, Marcus does have almost less screen time compared to everyone else so far, only being in one episode and two shorts, and that's really about it for his screen time. Marcus definitely is a nice and friendly guy for the most part, but that's really all we could say since, well, for his screen time, he just basically does whatever that the plot demands, so we don't really get to see him be a father to Honey that much. But hey, props to him because Honey is a good kid. Okay, next up is the character that, well, most of you were waiting for. Next up is Fido. Now, compared to everyone else, he has almost 2 episodes worth of screen time, most notably in the cafe episode and for a quick minor appearance in Perfect. Now, we're not going to talk about him in Perfect since, like we said, he was only in there for maybe a minute or two, and that's about it. But for him in Cafe, Winnie and Bluey did play along actually really well, almost like they were siblings. While Fido was just mainly talking to Bandit going along with the kids' game, that's pretty much it. But hey, we do need to give him credit here because he is a pretty iconic character alongside Winnie, and Winnie is a good kid for the most part, who was able to bond with Bluey almost immediately, so we have to give him points for that. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I'm sorry there's not really a lot to say for some entries, but now we're starting to get to the characters who have at least almost an episode's worth of screen time. Just outside of our final 5, we have Chloe's dad, Frank. Frank only has 1 episode worth of screen time that we can talk about, and that's his role in Octopus. Sure, he does appear in Spy Game, but mostly just as a background character, and that's about it. So that's where we'll talk about him. Now, we do see him trying to reenact the exact same game that Bluey and Chloe did previously with Bandit, although it did take him some time until the end of the episode to actually, well, be the exact same octopus that Bandit was. But otherwise, other than the game, Frank does definitely appear to be a positive and friendly guy, all things considered, since Chloe is actually a great kid. And we do have to give him points for that, definitely. Now, entering our top 5, this is easily going to be the most controversial pick out of the entire list, but believe it or not, Stripe is actually up here and not at the very bottom of the list. First off, we have to give him points for dealing with Muffin and Socks's crazy antics. Even though they are very young kids, it is understandable as of why. But we don't get all the negative reception that Stripe and Trixie actually have as bad parents. They are far from it. We never see them be abusive or anything like such. But yeah, Stripe easily does deserve credit for having to deal with Muffin. Now, here is a bad quality we could all immediately point to. The iconic, I'm not special anymore scene in library. Okay, sure, Stripe did kinda spoil Muffin, just a little bit, but at the end, he does actually realize the error in his ways and actually makes up for it. But he had to make it clear that while Muffin was definitely important to him and Trixie, Muffin definitely isn't special to everyone else. Besides, for all of the times we have seen him try to be a dad, we never see him get fed up or even pissed off at his kids. He tries to handle parenting in a positive way, kinda like Bandit, but unlike him, who we'll get to later, Stripe only has to lose just a couple of points. Otherwise, just like Trixie, him and Trixie are good parents. We really don't know why people call these two bad parents. But honestly, with all things considered, Stripe being in our top 5 was kind of unexpected, but we feel like this is a pretty respectful spot for him. Just outside of our final 3, we have Jack's dad. So compared to his wife, Jack's dad has more screen time and actually a few more positive things to talk about compared to Jack's mom in our Bluey Moms video. Kinda like Stripe and a few other dads previously, Jack's dad does seem to be a positive role model. We mainly see him in Explorers and about another episode or two. In Explorers, we just see him trying to pick up Jack from preschool, going on a bit of an adventure to do so with Lulu in the backseat of the car. Since SetNav wasn't exactly working in that episode, but Jack's dad managed to find a way, even getting help from Maynard in the process just so that he could try and get his son. This is about 90% the reason why he's up here and not under our top 5. This does prove that he can go above and beyond just to try and get his son, and honestly, that does seem pretty respectful. Honestly, there's not a lot more we could say, but for him being in our top 5, we're pretty happy he's up here. Alright, we are now in our final 3, so taking the bronze medal of good is gonna be kind of a coincidence, but Mort, aka Chili's dad, is actually gonna rank this high. So just like in our Bluey Moms video, we actually placed Chili's mom as our 3rd most good mom in that video, and Mort coincidentally ranks this high up as well. So first of all, big points for him helping Chili be the woman she really is, as well as her being an excellent mom in general. Now, unlike his wife, we do see Mort a few times in the series. Whenever he's with Bluey and Bingo, we do see him enjoying his time with them. This kind of shows that he's kind of like Bandit, who we'll get to in a bit, but as of right now though, that's kind of really what it feels like. And just like Rusty's dad, who we mentioned at the beginning of the list, he also used to be in the army. I mean, obviously now when we see him he's retired, but still though, that photo in Sticky Gecko does remind us about it. Mort honestly doesn't really have any negatives that we could say. The only reason why we can't give him a higher ranking are for 2 reasons. For starters, he doesn't have that much screen time, and secondly, we only ever see him in his elderly state. So, like Bob, we only see him here and not back when he was, well, still a dad to Chili. Back when he was probably in his 40s. Now, I know that point doesn't really bring up anything, but think of Bob back in the 80s, when we see him in Fairy Tale. Cause we could have given Mort an extra point or something if we actually saw him more, and actually being a very positive father. But for everything we're working with, Mort very easily deserves a very high ranking and claiming our bronze medal. But we have 2 more dads who are just a little bit better. Surprisingly for anyone who isn't paying attention, taking our silver medal of good is our favorite golden retriever neighbor, Pat. There is a lot to say with Pat, and first off, he only has 1 negative, which we will get out of the way first. The only time we ever see him be bad, well, even though it's really minor, was in the Pass the Parcel episode, and you all know what we're gonna discuss. Pat changing up the rules immediately flopped on the very first time he actually tried this, considering that every kid was actually upset at not getting a prize, other than the kid that was lucky enough to get the prize in the middle, and Pat was even offering to give them money. Yeah, to quote Chili, that's not good parenting. Look, we get it, you feel apologetic, but money isn't gonna solve everything. Thankfully though, we can give him a few points back, because the kids started getting used to, as they like to call it, Lucky's dad's rules, so that's something I guess. So whenever we see him not doing anything, such as in the Decider or in a quick moment in the Queen's episode, we see him be actually very helpful to the healers. Such as in whatever game Bluey and Bingo come up with that he has to take a part of that he's well aware of. Like when he tried to stop Bingo from using the feather wand. Or when he, even though he has never done this before, tried to help Banda give birth in the Dad Baby episode. Honestly, we could go on and on, but why does he even get this high of a ranking, someone's probably gonna say. Honestly, he seems to be a great man in general, and actually does care about both of his sons, Lucky and Chucky. In fact, back when we were talking about Chanel in the Bluey Moms video, specifically in the Decider episode, Pat and Chanel didn't really care which team Chucky decided to support. All that matters is that he was happy with it. And both parents were completely fine with it. You know, this actually does show that when his kids do make a decision, they'll be ready to support them no matter what. And that's honestly quite a great message to know. Now again, Pat doesn't have anything bad to talk about, so honestly, after everything we've seen him do, honestly, he kind of deserves to be near the top of the list. But obviously, there is still one parent who is more outclassed. And for anyone paying attention, say it with us now. The gold medal of good very easily goes to Bandit. Where do we even begin with him? Well, let's start with his couple really minor flaws. In Yoga Ball, for example, he accidentally tries to play too hard with Bingo even getting very upset and talking to Chili about this. But you have to remember in that episode that he actually did try to make up for this. And he easily has to deserve a high ranking for taking all of Bluey and Bingo's games, including, well, their friends, very seriously. Like trying to deal with Tina. To be a horse that Stripe can actually marry, only so that Socks can stop playing with Polly Puppy. And the list just goes on and on, especially since in one episode he was even willing to be pregnant. Yeah, I know that's a weird example, but hey, it's a real episode that you can find on YouTube. Also, for all of his messages, it is 100% relatable and understandable for why he would do this. Now, in Mini Bluey, we kinda could maybe take a slight point away for him being a little bossy with Bluey and Bingo, especially since he even stated that the food in the fridge wasn't theirs. A little much, but we don't think he was trying to be malicious. Besides, he is willing to reason with his girls, especially when he's trying to teach a lesson to some of them. We could go on here, but I think you all get the point. Besides, you all know how good of a dad Bandit really is. He more than deserves the gold medal of good.